everybody, this is April from Just Sew, and we just put up a new quilt in our window using the pattern called Disappearing 4-Patch. A few months ago, a customer came into the shop, thank you Patty, and told me about this project she was working on called a Disappearing 4-Patch, and she quickly showed me how she did it in the shop, and I was hooked. I came home and I couldn't stop thinking about this Disappearing 4-Patch, and I just had to make it. So that's what I ended up making to put in the window at our shop. So I wanted to make a little bit of a tutorial on how to make the Disappearing 4-Patch. Now this is a pattern using all 5-inch squares. I think you could probably use any size that you want to, but I used 5-inch squares because I love working with pre-cuts. So it's the charm pack size. So for every one charm pack you use, then you'll also need a solid to go with it, and you'll see why. Okay, so in order to construct the Disappearing 4-Patch, I'll talk about that first, and then I'll talk about the layout, because how you lay it out determines, it gives you just different looks. That's what I loved about it. You're going to take 2 solids and then 2 of the print, and you sew them together in pairs, okay, like this. And then when you do that, in order to make a 4-patch, you're going to nest I iron towards the dark, okay? So I flipped it over and I ironed towards the dark for both of my little 2 sets here, okay? Then you flip it over, nest your seams, and sew along here to make your 4-patch, okay? Now what you want to do is pick. You look at your 4-patch and you decide, I'm going to have a color, a print always in the upper right. That's what I did, and that just helped me when I was cutting. I oriented myself to always have a print in the upper right corner. Now here we have our 4-patch on a rotating cutting mat. This thing is so great for this project. And I also have a 10-inch square ruler that I'm going to use, okay? So you find your center, which is right where the 4-patch meets, okay? Then you take your ruler and see I'm going to cut, I need to find my 1 inch. So I'm going to take this 1-inch line and lay it right down the middle seam. So I have my 1-inch line going right down the middle of my 4-patch, okay? So I'm going to hold down my ruler, use my rotary cutter, and cut. Ooh, it's kind of scary to cut something you've already sewn. Don't move anything with the actual fabric. Turn the rotating cutting mat. Pick up the ruler and relocate it. You're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna take that 1-inch line and put it down the middle seam. Cut. Pick up the ruler, turn, 1-inch line on the seam. Cut. Pick up the ruler, turn, put the line on the seam, and cut at the 1 inch. So you do that 4 times. You do it on every side, okay? So now, this is what you have left. So what you're gonna do, you leave everything in its place except these long rectangular pieces. You flip each one like so, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna treat this, I want you to treat each of these as a row. So this is the top row, the middle row, and the bottom row, okay? This pattern, this pattern, this pattern, and this pattern are all the same on this quadrant, okay? And then this pattern, this pattern, this pattern, and this pattern are the same on this quadrant. Okay, so now we're gonna sew all the rows together. So using your 1/4-inch seam, you're gonna sew everything together. These are your rows, so I left this apart so you could kind of reorient yourself to what I'm doing. Okay, then you're gonna take this row together, sew it while you're nesting your seams. You'll get the hang of which way to iron your seams so that they nest together. Okay, and then at the very end, we'll have a finished square. Voila, like this. Okay, so a few facts that I want to share with you all. So once you have finished all of your blocks, you want to true them to 8.5 by 8.5 inches. That's what they should be. Then you get to decide your layout. But before we do that, I just wanted to talk to you really quick about if your charm pack has any squares in it that read kind of light, you might not want to use them. You might want to discard them because they might not contrast as much with your solid white charm squares. that's just something to think about. If you use one printed charm pack and one solid charm pack, you will end up with 21 of these blocks, okay, 21. Now the layout, if you just want to do one printed and one solid, then that layout would be 4 blocks by 5 blocks, and then you would have 1 block left over. Or if you needed to eliminate 2 because they were too light, then you would end up with 20 of these blocks. Now in the quilt using these blocks called Bramble Cottage, that's what this charm pack is called, you'll see that the layout was just a repeated layout, block after block after block, oriented the same direction all the way across. That's using one printed charm pack and one solid charm pack. Then there is a 1.5 inch border. It was 2 inches cut, 1.5 inch solid white border that matches the same as the solid in the 4 patches. And then there's a piano key border. That's using a second printed charm pack. Each of the squares cut in half and just randomly sewn together just to kind of spice up the border a little bit. Okay, now this quilt is using the charm pack called Flower Garden. And I wanted to make mine a little bit bigger because I wanted to put it in our shop window. So this one I used 1.5 charm packs solid and 1.5 charm packs that were printed. And I did the layout differently. So I oriented the blocks so that the 4 white squares would go together. So I made this quilt a little bit bigger. So it's 5 blocks by 6 blocks. And it also has a 1.5 inch finished border, inner border, the white. And then I just did a solid fabric border on the outside. I didn't do a piano key. So there's really no technical pattern out there for me to, like a PDF of this to put in the description or something. It's really just taking your 4 patch, cutting 1 inch square, 1 inch all the way around, reorienting the different pieces, sewing them back together. That's what us quilters do, right? We cut and then sew everything back together. And then it's all about the layout. You can go online and see lots of different layout designs. These are the 2 most that I saw when I was looking. But you can also, obviously you can grow it into a huge quilt, you know, just getting more charm packs. You could also do the same thing with a layer cake, which are the 10 by 10 squares. If you don't want to do as much work, but you still want like a bigger finished product. So those would work just as well as the charm packs. You can make a teeny tiny itty bitty one with the mini charms, which would be kind of crazy but cool looking. So anyway, so that's a really fun project. It goes super quick once you get the hang of it. One other tip that I would recommend is once you have your 4 patch and you cut the 1 inches and you turn all your pieces, I would go ahead and then sew all the rows together before you cut the other 1 inch on your next block, because it does get a little confusing with which square is this and what part. I tried to be really efficient and cut a bunch at once and it didn't work. I got really confused. So that's another hint. So I hope this video finds you well, and I hope it helps you. If you have any questions, just let us know. We'll help you walk through the project. Have a good day.